And welcome to the Township Whitewater Region's regular council meeting for Wednesday, March 20th. We'll call ourselves to order here at 4:45 p.m. And we have quorum. I noticed everybody is here as we start. Our next item on the agenda is our national anthem. I'll get everybody to stand, please, and face the flag.
Singing with the microphone then. Yeah. Oh, no.
And next is our land acknowledgement. So as we gather, we would like to acknowledge on behalf of council and our community that we're meeting on the traditional territory of the Algonquin people. We would like to thank the Algonquin people and express our respect and support for their rich history, and we're extremely grateful for their many and continued displays of friendship. We also thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. Next item on the agenda is the adoption of our agenda for this evening. The recommendation is that the Council of Township Whitewater Region approve the March 20th, 2024 agenda. A mover and a seconder, please. So, Councillor Trim and Councillor Moore. Is there any changes that anyone would like to propose to the agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor? And it's carried. Next item is the adoption of some previous minutes. The recommendation is the Council of the Township Whitewater Region approve the March 6, 2024 minutes. A mover and a seconder again, please. Councillor Tabbert. Councillor Olmsted. Is there any errors or omissions that have been noted by anybody in the minutes that were provided as part of the package? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor? And it's carried. Next, there's a number of committee and board minutes that have been provided for our information as well as the public information. The first ones are library board minutes from January and February, and I'll just give it, we have two members of council that sit on the library board, Deputy Mayor and Councillor Tabbert. Any comments you want to make towards those two sets of minutes?
Not at this time, myself and I do.
Okay.
I just want to let everyone know that on April 26th, the library is hosting a trivia night fundraiser, and I hope to see so many people out to support it. Thank you.
Good, thank you. The next item is the County Council February minutes. Provided we spoke to those at the last council meeting, so I won't get into those. But there's the actual copy of those minutes are available for you to review or for the public to review. Good. Next item is disclosures of interest. Is there any disclosures that have to be made about anything on the agenda tonight? Okay, I see none. And next we move on to probably a reason why there's a number of people in the audience today. We have a delegation has been requested by Mrs. Kerry Dunn. So at this point in time, Mrs. Dunn, I'll get you to come up to the mic, turn it on, introduce yourself just for the members that might be listening, and the floor is yours.
Honourable members of Council of Whitewater Region, my name is Kerry Dunn, and I have been a resident of Whitewater Region for the past 6 years, frequently visiting the area for over a decade. I was disheartened to hear the news that our paved road would be replaced with a less substantial alternative, namely a gravel surface. The plan entails converting 2.35 kilometers of Hila Road from a paved surface to a gravel one, alongside brushing, culvert replacements, and additional ditching. With this initiative may have been While this initiative may have been well-intentioned, it carries numerous negative impacts that must be carefully considered before any irreversible decision are made. A petition bearing the signatures of 145 concerned citizens underscores a clear consensus that a gravel road is an unsuitable replacement for the existing paved surface of Hila Road. While the constraints of work schedules prevented many from attending this meeting in person, their voices are equally vital and should not be overlooked. I think we had a great turnout, though. First and foremost, the safety of our residents must be our top priority. Converting Hila Road to gravel introduces significant hazards for motorists, cyclists, and pedestrians alike. Gravel roads are inherently more susceptible to potholes, washouts, and uneven surfaces, increasing the risk of accidents and injuries. Emergency response times could be compromised, putting lives in danger during critical situations. The addition of deeper ditches can also pose a great safety concern and encroach upon agricultural land, reducing the total area available for cultivation. We cannot afford to gamble with the safety of our community members by subjecting them to uncertainties of gravel road conditions. Moreover, the conversion of Hila Road threatens to disrupt the delicate balance of our local ecosystem. Wildlife habitats along the road could be disrupted, leading to displacement and potential harm to vulnerable species, particularly the snapping turtles and river otters. Dust and debris generated by gravel road can contaminate nearby water sources, endangering aquatic life and compromising water quality. As stewards of our environment, it is our responsibility to preserve and protect the natural landscapes that make our region unique. Additionally, Hila Road was paved in approximately 1994, from what I've been advised, representing a significant investment by the community that should be recognized as a return on investment. Reverting it to gravel would not only negate this investment, but also incur additional costs for maintenance and repair over time. Furthermore, the decision to convert Hila Road to gravel has significant implications for property values in the surrounding areas. Studies have consistently shown that properties located on gravel roads tend to depreciate in value compared to those with paved access. Homeowners could suffer financial losses as a result of decreased marketability and diminished property values. Businesses reliant on consistent road access may face operational challenges and reduced customer traffic, impacting their bottom line. When inquiring with members of the Public Works about the criteria a road is graded on to be recommended for replacement, I was advised that there is currently no system in place for this. Although a vehicle counter was put in place in December, it was promptly removed several days by a plow truck driver. The decision to install a counter in December has baffled many community members. The data obtained would not accurately reflect the amount of vehicular traffic on this road, as many farmers have already removed their crops and tilled and fertilized the fields. The Council's requested $65,000 in funding from the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund, the OCIF, to complete this project. The residents and frequent travelers of Hila Road are urging the council members to instead consider halting this project slated for this year and to request the funding from the OCIF for the replacement of our paved surface with a new hard surface. The annual cost to continue cold patching Hila Road would be a fraction of the cost compared to dispatching a grader and operator to maintain a gravel surface. I urge Council to carefully reconsider the proposal to convert Hila Road to gravel, taking into account the concerns. Thank you. I urge Council to carefully reconsider the proposal to convert Hila Road to gravel, taking into account the concerns raised regarding safety, environmental impact, and property values. Alternative solutions must be explored to address any underlying issues while preserving the well-being and prosperity of our community. Let us work together to find a sustainable path forward that prioritizes the best interests for all residents of the Whitewater region. Thank you for your attention to this matter.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mrs. Dunn, and we appreciate you taking time out of your day to produce this presentation and to come and have an opportunity to represent your community. So at that point, I'll turn it over to Council to see if there's any questions or comments that Council wants to make for Mrs. Dunn. Councillor Olmsted.
Yeah, thanks very much. Obviously, it's a very important issue with this many people, which congratulations. Just a couple of questions. and some of these may be for Lane as well, just want to understand the current surface treatment. Is it a paved road or is it a double surface treated road currently?
Yeah, it's a double surface treatment.
Okay, so, okay. And plans to turn it to gravel, was there plans to turn to gravel similar to other roads that we've had and then double surface treated, or plans to strictly leave it at gravel at this point in time?
Through the 2024 budget, determined that Hila Road was one of the worst roads in the township network, and based on the shortfall of the funding through our asset management plan,
Yeah.
it determined at that time to turn it to gravel.
So if I may, I know in a couple of other areas, we turned roads from DST to gravel, and they were such poor shape, we left them for a year and then double surface treated. Is that the thinking behind this one, or is this one to leave it to gravel?
The current status is to leave it to gravel.
Great, okay, thank you.
Good. Any other questions for Mrs. Dunn? Councillor Moore.
In keeping with what Councillor Olmsted said, I was going to mention that we have previously gone back to gravel, and there is a number of roads, Hawthorne Road being one of them, which is very busily traveled and is a cross-country trek for the fire department. It's a cross-cut. They have no problem with going back to gravel, and with having a regular grader, now having 2 and sometimes 3 graders on the road, we are able to keep up, weather permitting, that it's not pouring rain. But in the back of my mind, when we did budget this year, that I was going to bring up next year at budget to leave this gravel over the winter and let it pack like we did Powers Road and Zion Line, and see where we went then with the next budget. That was my way of thinking, but again, we have to wait till we get to the deliberations in October for next budget. Thank you.
Good. Is there anybody that has any questions for Mrs. Dunn? Councillor Tabbert.
I have to have a question for...
Perfect.
Okay. Lane, the counter, you said, Mrs. Dunn said it was put in December when it would be least busiest. There was no counter during the summer when it would be heavy traffic more than in the winter. Is that correct? It was in the winter?
It was.
Why would we do a counter in winter when it's to me it's a summer road because it'd be more heavily used. So why would we do a counter in December and not say June, July, or August?
Yeah, so we do have multiple counters within the in our department, and we have been aggressively doing traffic counts on all of our roads. And at this time, we are doing from spring to winter. We are counting them just to get some counts on the roads, and then we're going back and during summer months. The problem with some of the traffic counts is in summertime there's less traffic sometimes for buses, for example. We see sometimes that the perfect time is fall time to do counts, which includes traffic going to schools and that.
But you did it in December.
That's correct.
And Deputy Mayor.
Thank you very much. I'm just piggybacking here on Councillor Moore. I'm just wondering if for this year we do take the opportunity to turn it back to gravel, or if we were going to, whatever the decision, and take a look at it again in the next budget. Either way, we would have to do it. If we're going to do a double service treatment in the next budget, we would have to do it this year anyway. So why don't we do it, put it back to gravel, would have to be done anyway, and see where we end up with the moving forward. I'm not saying that we can or we can't, but it would be an opportunity to try. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Councillor Olmsted.
I'm sorry, this one would be, I guess, a finance question, if that's allowed. Or, okay. I understand there was a comment made that the funds were coming from OSIF, if I'm not mistaken. So is there an opportunity for OSIF, I know there's very strict guidelines on when you can use it, is there an opportunity that some of that money can be parked? So, for example, let's say we decided not to tear it up, can we reserve that money for this year, combine it with some funds next year and double service treat it next year? Is that an opportunity?
That is an opportunity, yes. So even in this year's budget, there's a small amount that we did of OSIF hold over for next year for the plans of doing a bigger project next year, to the tune of about $100,000 is what's been held in reserve. We're allowed to hold it up to 2 years plus interest.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? So, Councillor Trim, Councillor Bell, your turn.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, through you to our Public Works Manager, would it be a possibility or even reasonable to continue for this year to coal patch the road, or is that just a complete waste of money? Your opinion, please.
So the current PCI index is 31 and 35 on the two sections of Hila, which does require coal patching.
Sorry, Manager Public, just
sorry,
nobody knows what PCI is or what 31 or 35 is, so just context, please.
Paving condition index, sorry. So it is one of our lower scores within the township. But saying that is, it's not one of our highest coal patching roads. So it's one strategy that we could keep coal patching it, and defer it for next year or the year after. It's possible.
Please go ahead.
Well, based on that information, I'm hoping that I have an opportunity to promote the idea of, for this year, coal patching till we get a better idea of the traffic count and a better handle on our budget. That'd be my comment. Thank you.
Councillor Bell, did you want to jump in? Your turn.
Yeah, the transportation master plan is, like, I know this decision was made before that was completed. Where are we on that, and has Hila Road been assessed with that, with the assessments that were taking place with that plan?
Yeah, so for the I'm referring to like the county, the joint project with the county Renfrew. So that project will identify what roads are road classification. So if it's a local road or a collector road, so that is ongoing with completion in the fall of 2024.
Yeah, go again, Councillor Bell.
As far as projects for this year, I know I believe there were 3 roads that were suggested that they were going back, going from DST to gravel. There was one, I know Colesmith Road was slated to be for DST to go down on that stretch of road this year. Can you just remind me what other projects are on the go for DST for this year?
Yeah. So Colesmith is for DST, and that section is from Queens Line to Kerr Line, and then Rapid Road is getting its 3rd lift treatment, and then the two roads that are classified to be DST to gravel is Hila and then Sutherland Road.
Total of 4 road projects for this summer.
That's correct.
Councillor Olmsted.
Yeah, so just back to the double service treatment. So if council did decide that we would go back to DST this road, would you recommend that we treat it like Zion Line and I think Dombrowski Road, that we would turn it back to gravel, leave it for a period of time. I think it was mostly the winter. So I think we maybe stripped them in the fall, left it with the winter, and then DST it the next spring or summer. Would that be your recommendation for this road as well?
It is part of our department's work plan is to turn to gravel, so it would fit in that. With a new collection equipment, we haven't seen a great benefit to leave it over the winter. But it's something that council to move forward to do it this year or wait till next year.
Hey, my question is more of our best roads now seem to be the roads that we leave for a period of time to let settle. I know we didn't do that for a stretch of Zion Line and a couple of other roads, but the roads that we left for a period of 5 or 6 months, or I think over the winter, the roads really seem to settle well, and the DST really seems to be, it's almost like a paved road. And I know those roads were in very bad shape before we did that. So my question's more of would you recommend that strategy for this road?
I would. We've had mixed results from that. I know, for example, Powers Road, we had deficiency after we did that, some case, but I would recommend doing that for this road.
Okay, thank you.
Bill?
Sorry, and I know we talked about this at budget time, but the financial implications for going from DST to gravel as opposed to DST and then basically re-DSTing that stretch of road. What is the difference in that financial implication if the decision was made that instead of going back to gravel, we were going to just redo it in DST this year?
Apologies. The current cost this year is $65,000 to turn to gravel. The total project for DST would be $225,000.
And this question is for the treasurer. So whenever at budget time, $67,000 is basically representative of a 1% increase in a tax levy, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. So the difference on those two projects is roughly little under $200,000.
Yep.
That's
160.
Yep.
yeah, 160. Okay.
Good. Is there any other questions or comments? Yes, Councillor Olmsted?
Sorry, just numbers. Just so I'm clear, the 65 is to turn it back to gravel. The 220 is everything? Not 220 plus 65, it'll be 220 to convert it. Thank you.
Yes, CAO, I ask you to step in.
Yeah, and I would just to provide a couple clarifications. So the four roads that were mentioned are the changes from DST to DST or DST to gravel. We have other road programs, so the gravel road program are other projects that the department will be working on, just to clarify that. The traffic counter, if I could, I mean, we have 3 traffic counters. We have a lot of roads, so we're trying to program which road they're on and recognizing maybe December is not the best time. So we'll look at trying to put it out at a different time of the year. And if I could just, for some more clarification through our manager, is if council was to move to leave the road status quo, is there any immediate culvert repairs that would be required this year? Thanks.
Thank you. There is 2 or 3 culverts that have to be changed. One very large culvert, which we would probably do that if that was a recommendation. We would like to do that ahead of time, just for the compaction issue. But it's not in. But as you know, it's not a high risk of failure.
Okay, just one question, and it's more just to help make sure everybody understands. Can you talk about 35 or a PCI of 30, 35? Why is it slated to go from DST to gravel? What safety concerns or minimum standards are we obliged to ensure the road has? Like, what's triggering our decision to have to do this? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yes, so with our staff, we, the one legislation that we follow is the minimum maintenance standards. It doesn't specify what the rating should be, but it does specify like potholes and shoulders and like plowing and like that. So that's what the standard that we would follow, and it just require more staff time filling the potholes in this case.
DAO, you want to jump in?
Yeah, sure. I guess to supplement the response from the manager is, so the PCI index is the performance index of the road. So it's based on a 100 factor, just to provide more clarity. So a factor of 30 or 35 is at the lower or lowest end of our road network in the community. This data is quite new to the staff. It was funded last year through a street scan project, and we just received the data in the last couple of weeks. So that'll be shared with council in the coming months. But of the roads in our network that are hard surfaced, Hila was at the lower or lowest end. The funding model, ultimately council's aware, and maybe not so much the public, but council's certainly aware of our asset management plan. That's the plan that looks at all of our assets, roads, facilities, and says we should be spending such an amount to maintain our current level of service. That number is $12 million annually in maintenance and renewal. This year, our capital budget was in the range of, and I'll get our treasurer to correct me if I'm wrong, but probably in the range of about $2 to $2.5 million. So there's a shortfall there of funding, and council's aware of that, and I applaud council because we've increased the levy at 4.2% for capital in the last couple of years, and that's extremely important, but there's a huge shortfall. So the level of service we have now, in its current state, it'll be difficult to fund and maintain that level. So these are the tough decisions that council will have to be faced with in the coming years. But certainly staff are willing to support council in their decisions, and we'll move forward with whatever's decided. Thanks.
Perfect. Is there any other comment? And thank you, Mrs. Dunn, for being so patient up there. No questions for you. Yes, please, go ahead.
I think you do need to also hone in on the fact that paved or DST has been in place for 30 years, 25 to 30 years. So, I mean, the return on investment is a huge value there from when it was done. And many of the homes on Hila Road, it's a very much growing community. We need to look at the value of those homes and the income and the families that's attracting. I just wanted to add to that point. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Good. So what I've heard from council members, I've heard an option to consider keeping it as is and cold patching for a year to defer the decision, keeping our decision as it is now, and turning it to gravel and holding it for gravel for a year. Is that some of the discussion that I heard council talking about? Okay. Given that, can we ask staff to just review those two options? Cold patching versus changing it to gravel and holding it to gravel for a year, and come back for a decision at the next council meeting. We obviously have to consider Sutherland, the other one that is slated to go, and whatever factors we use to assess Hila has to be considered for Sutherland. So that and the costs associated with it also have to be a factor. So if we can get staff to come back with some clear options for us, and then we can consider those holistically. CEO, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, just for clarity, the report coming back would speak, I mean, naturally about the financing. So if you choose to gravel and move to DST next year, what are the impacts to the 2025 budget? The other component would be just the reallocation of resources. So if staff are not doing this road this year, where are we going to position them? Is there any other type of topics or areas you want us to explore?
I'll open it to the floor. Is there anything else that you want to stack onto that? Councillor Trim?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, as Public Works Manager indicated, we may want to go ahead with some culvert work in advance, and so that's something that I would like to hear about as part of that report. Thank you.
Yeah. So there, and just to, I'm specifically referring to the surface treatment of the road, the ditching, the other works that are essential. Yes, we'll encompass those in the report, but I think they need to take place anyway, or as part of the plan. The road base, as many, people in the public know, it's all about the road base. If the ditches hold water, it gets into the road base, erodes the road. If trees are in the ditches, it contains the water. If we don't replace the culverts, the road starts to settle. So these are things we cannot, those are the investments we cannot forego on. The surface treatment is the area I think that we need to discuss in some more detail. Good, is that, I'm looking just for a consensus around council. We're clear with that? Staff, are you good with that?
Yeah, just, we mentioned Sutherland Road as well, so for both the roads that are proposed for gravel? Great, thanks.
Just so we don't repeat this process.
Excellent,
We'll do
yes.
both at the same time.
Understood.
Good? Excellent. Yes, Councillor Trim.
Yes, I think it needs to be said frankly, what our CAO tried to say very nicely, is that it is something that I personally wrestle with and don't know how to resolve, is the fact that we do not have enough money now, or even going forward, to maintain the level of service that we've had in the past. That seems so unbelievable to me, and I can't get my head around it. And so that means reduction of service. And no matter where we try to reduce service, it's going to cause the people directly affected to be very, very upset. And so, as I said, our CAO tried to say that in a nice way, but there's no nice way to say it. And I don't know how to resolve it. It is a fact that we cannot maintain the level of service that we have had in the past because there's not enough money coming in. And that is almost, how do you explain that? And I don't know how to. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Trim. And that's what we wrestle with. 200 kilometers of double surface treatment road, and we cannot afford to maintain 200 kilometers. So you either decrease the amount of road or increase the taxes. It's the only two things that we have left to do. But these types of discussions are exactly what we need to have, because this gets more fidelity on the issue, brings it out. The public has an opportunity to impress upon us where the priority should be, and gives us more information with which to make the decision. So the process is, although cumbersome, it's worthwhile. Good. Any final comments? No. Thank you so much, Mrs. Dunn. The delegation, we appreciate it. Like I said, this is exactly what council hopes for, public input. Thank you. Good. And we'll just take a short recess to allow anybody that might want to leave the opportunity to leave, and then we'll recommence in about 3 or 4 minutes. So thank you. And welcome back to the Township Whitewater Region's regular council meeting for Wednesday, March 20th. And we are going to recommence at 5:24 p.m. Excellent. Next item on the agenda is the mayor's address, and I've prepared some notes here. So welcome back, everyone, from the March break season. And everyone that had an opportunity to travel or enjoy the St. Patrick's Day celebrations. On behalf of Whitewater Region, I attended 12 meetings since our last council meeting. I also had a number of meetings with the Renfrew County and District Health Unit Board as we discussed merger options with neighboring health units. Our board chair said it best at the conclusion of our discussion that a full assessment of the risks and benefits of a potential merger have been completed. The Board of Health has concluded that the interests of the residents of Renfrew County and District are best served by maintaining our status quo and not pursuing a merger at this time. So there's more information in a press release. I think the township has had access to that press release. So it is available for council if you want to take a look at it. But it was a very in-depth analysis that I got to know more about the health unit than I had ever imagined existed. Good. These past 2 weeks, it had a number of events that I would like to highlight just a couple. First, we've had our introductory meetings for our Community Services Committee that's chaired by Councillor Bell and Councillor Tabbert is also assigned to it, and our Water and Wastewater Task Force, Councillor Olmsted and Councillor Moore. I want to just publicly thank and acknowledge all the community members who have volunteered their time to serve on these organizations, and we look forward to using these forums to make recommendations back to council as a whole on these important topics. Second, we had public information centers, a virtual one and 2 in-person events that served to gather some community ideas about recreation facility reuse and adaptation. And as you're aware, council had made commitment to extensive engagement with the community on this. It started with the first recommendation back in 2021 with our Parks and Recreation Operational Review. And then it was recommended again in the 2022 Westmeath Recreation Task Force final report. And then most recently, back in September, we directed staff to implement this recommendation. Between these 3 events, the survey and upcoming interviews, we know there'll be significant community input and we look forward to it. And I just want to thank everyone who's taken the time to participate. Last, I just wanted to note that our Municipal Emergency Control Group has had its first meeting related to the spring freshet. Staff are meeting with county and provincial staff as they do every spring to monitor and advise on the forecasted water levels. Staff have shared these details with our emergency control group, and at this point levels are within the expected ranges. The situation will continue to be monitored and the emergency control group will continue to be updated as required. So we have implemented our spring freshet updates. So that ends my mayor's report. If there's any questions, I can take them now. Good. We'll move on with the next item is public comments. And clerk, I'll just confirm, is there any public comments verbally or in writing?
I received none.
Excellent, thank you. And that leads into our reports. First report in front of us is the annual drinking water reports. The recommendation is that the Council of the Township Whitewater Region receive the 2023 annual reports for the following drinking water systems: Beachburg, Cobden, and Hila drinking water systems. A mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Moore, seconded by Councillor Trim. Are we doing an introduction? Superintendent Nicholson? Excellent, floor is yours.
Thank you. So we're here tonight to present the 2023 annual drinking water reports for the Beachburg, Cobden, and Hila drinking water systems. So these reports are presented to council as a requirement under the regulations to provide the summary reports to council before March 31st. So I will pass this over to Ashley Pilgrim and Kaylee Sarf from Aqua to go over the details from each of the reports that they provided.
Thank you.
Thank you. The first report we'll look at today is the Beachburg Drinking Water Report. Like Deanna said, it's prepared based on last year's data and is due at the end of February and presented before the end of March, which is what we're doing here today. There was one inspection completed in May of 2023 with a rating of 100%. There was one external audit done by SII Global for our quality emergency management system, environmental management system. And there was no major nonconformances identified here. We did have one incident of noncompliance with respect to our permit to take water. That regulates how much raw water we're allowed to take from our source, and I'll get into the details of that later in the report. There was 2 complaints in Beachburg, both related to low pressure. For those that haven't toured the plant, there's 2 wells on site that are used for production, one dug, one drilled. After that, the water makes its way into a package plant. It's an Ecodyne unit where passate is used as a coagulant and chlorine is used as a disinfectant. After it is treated through the package treatment plant and filtered, chlorine has the option to be added again a second time, but the contact time throughout the filter and package plant is enough to maintain disinfection, so we are not doing that at this time. And after that, water is headed to the distribution system, and of course there's no storage in Beachburg. This takes us into the summary of noncompliance. There was no adverse water quality incidents here, and the noncompliance event that we touched on earlier was based on a flow exceedance. This was due to an outpost trending error. It wasn't a maintenance or mechanical issue, and it had to be reported based on what the trending showed as the exceedance. This takes us into our flow summaries for the year. That's where you'll see the one permit to take water exceedance in the the drilled well, whereas the dug well stayed under. Details of this are reported in Appendix A as well that are summarized and reported to the ministry. Additionally, there was another well pump spike that was not required to be reported to the ministry as it lasted less than a minute, and that's what the second spike is on the drilled well maximum flow rate. This takes us into our treated water flows, and that's regulated under our municipal drinking water license. There is no exceedances here, and our flow total is trending down, which is an interesting thing to note. Moving on to our regulatory sampling. This is consistent across the board. We'll see 52 minimum raw samples. Of course, with the 2 sources, we see it individually at the dug and drilled well, as well as 52 treated water samples. And the number of distribution samples will vary based on the number of users for the system. So there is no noncompliance events with these. Our operational testing is in-house with the exception of any online analyzers, but there is no noncompliance events with those. Our inorganic parameters and organic parameters in Beachburg are required to be tested annually, with the exception of sodium and fluoride. Those are tested every 5 years, and nitrates are tested quarterly. There was no MAC exceedances for those in the reporting period. Schedule 15 sampling is lead related. We test that semi-annually. There was no exceedances for that. Beachburg is on a reduced sampling schedule as well, so lead's only tested every 3 years, whereas pH and alkalinity are tested semi-annually every year. The last note of samples are for our disinfection byproducts. That's the THMs and HAs, or trihalomethanes and haloacetic acids, and there is no MAC exceedances for those as well. We have additional legislated sampling in Beachburg with our municipal drinking water license because we send backwash effluent to the natural environment. We need to monitor the total suspended solids and total chlorine on a quarterly basis. Based on these samples, our annual average did not exceed. Looking at the major maintenance that was performed last year, we did replace the drilled well pump. With that, we had to do a little bit of landscaping work and move the fence in order to access the well. We also replaced the pressure tank on site with 2 new pressure tanks. Looking into distribution maintenance, there was a service leak, hydrant seals repaired, a new service installed, a second new service installed, and then some curb stops that were repaired. We also had a valve exercising program performed in the spring flushing and fall flushing, though the spring flushing was delayed due to the spring freshet. And that wraps up Beachburg. Moving on to Cobden.
Sorry, what I'll do, just the volume of the information.
Yes.
We'll pause.
Sure.
After each one and just confirm if there's any questions. So Council, is there any questions on the report for Beachburg? Yes, Councillor Tower.
Through you, Mayor, can you tell me when the dug well was dug? You have the drilled well, but not the dug well.
Unfortunately, we don't have that information available to us. Do you know what year the plant was built? That'd be your best-
1948
There we go.
or 47.
I was going to say in the 50s would be my best guess.
Any other questions? Good. I just had just a couple. The first one is, I noticed that it's trending down. You had made note of that the total water flow, the usage had trended down, even with 2 new hookups. And I imagine that's 2 new builds in the community that have hooked up to the water system. Is there any explanation, or is just people are using less water? Is that the assumption?
The assumption now, like to me, is just water conservation efforts with the last couple summers. We're getting closer to our maximum output just during those hot, dry days. And we've put on water restrictions to keep the plant demand as low as we can throughout that. But overall, as it trends over the last 5 years, yes, it is gradually starting to creep down.
Okay. And just for you spoke about an outpost trending error. Can you explain that in layman's terms, just in case any of the members of the public want to understand it?
For sure. Outpost is an aqua-specific trending program. You might have heard us speak of SCADA, supervisory control and data acquisition. Aqua loves our acronyms, so I'll do my best to explain those. But that essentially is the brain of the water plant, and it monitors remotely what's going on. So when there's an issue with the trending, we're able to explain it usually with backup trending that we have on site as chart recorders, or we're able to refetch the data and bring back its memory.
It was really a technical glitch. It wasn't an actual fault with the system. Okay.
Yes.
Good. And the last thing I'll just note, you had mentioned at the very beginning of your presentation about low pressure complaints. There were the only 2 complaints received in the last year in Beachburg?
Yes.
And were they resolved, or?
Staff was able to investigate hydrants outside of the homes to confirm that there was pressure in the main, and it was determined that it was either a plumbing issue or a appliance-specific issue within the home.
Perfect. Okay. Good. Any other questions? Does that trigger anything with council? Excellent. Thank you. If you can move on to the next one, please.
Okay. So looking at Cobden, we had 2 inspections last year. Same with Hila. This was due to an MECP scheduling hiccup. We usually have a report every year, but with COVID delays, we had it pushed from 2022 to early 2023. And to get back on schedule, we had another one 6 months later. So that's why we have 2 for Cobden and Hila. The first one, we had an inspection rating of 92.8, and the second one was a rating of 100%. We had an external audit completed by SAI Global with no major or minor nonconformances identified. There was no other noncompliance events in Cobden last year. With the 11 complaints, 6 of them were color related. 1 was odor, 1 was sediment, 1 was a leak in the system, and the other 2 were related to chlorine levels or just water quality. Not concerns, but a question as to what we were putting out besides our regular microbiological sample lab results that we could provide. Our Cobden water treatment plant is a surface water treatment plant that draws water from Muskrat Lake. Like Beachburg, it has an Ecodyne plant. There's also a second package plant in place known as a Korox system. It also uses passate and a second coagulant aid known as polymer to help bind the solids and remove it with the filter. Chlorine is also used on site here as the disinfectant. We also have an option to use potassium permanganate at the raw water header or the intake for manganese control in the hotter months when we notice that is an issue. It also helps with zebra mussel control. Processed water from this plant goes to the wastewater treatment plant with the option to discharge it to Muskrat River if needed, but we haven't had to do that in the past years. And the summary of non-compliance, there was none noted during the reporting period. All of them were reported during the MECP inspection in February. The first one being outside of the reporting period altogether, but was mentioned in the inspection period because of the delay. So that inspection covered stuff from 2022 as well as 2023. So this was, again, an outpost and SCADA monitoring issue that was reported as required and the inspector deemed complete. And the other two were issues with an ongoing study in Cobden for the THM, so a little bit of, I guess, incidental stuff going on with reporting is that stuff got missed with the study. Moving into our raw water flows, there were 28 incidents where the permit to take water was exceeded with less than 1 minute, so these were not reportable, though it does look jarring to see. This is due to pump startups. It's not uncommon to see in Cobden. Looking at our raw water flows in general, you'll see there's a spike in May and a spike in October. Our October spike is due to our fall flushing program, and the spike in May is due to increased water usage with the hot weather. That's the weekend that we had plus 30-degree weather super early. Our treated water flows are trending up in Cobden. And this takes us into our regulatory sample results. You'll notice here we had 51 collected samples reported versus 52. This was not an issue of non-compliance. It was a non-quantifiable lab result that was reported as NDOG or no data overgrown with target bacteria. So the lab could not process the sample that was submitted. No exceedances in our operational testing. Inorganic parameters here are tested every year. Fluoride and sodium are every 60 months, and nitrates are quarterly. No half max for those. It was a lead sampling year in Cobden as well. This is under reduced sampling too. So we sample lead every 3 years, and we sample our alkalinity and pH semi-annually every year. Organic parameters are every year here in Cobden as well. And then our trihalomethanes and haloacetic acids are an annual average. So we are over the half MAC here in Cobden, but it's a topic that we've spent some time on in the past, and we've had a study done in the past, something we'll continue to monitor going forward. The additional legislative sampling here with the municipal drinking water license is the same with Beachburg, that because we have the option to discharge to the natural environment, we need to monitor what goes out. Though because we do discharge directly to the sewage plant, we're able to not quarterly sample. The second additional sampling we spoke about in the past as well is harmful algal bloom. So because Muskrat Lake has a history of harmful algal blooms, we test on a weekly basis here during the harmful algal bloom season from June to October. So we collected a total of 22 samples in the raw and treated water, and the microcystin, which is the harmful element in the algae, was not detected. Looking at the major maintenance that was performed last year in Cobden, we replaced the post-filter chlorine sample pump. We did some distribution work by cleaning out the valve boxes, and there was some SCADA work done. In the distribution system, we had the spring and fall flushing programs. We had 2 emergency repairs, one at the arena itself and one on Astrolab outside of the arena. And then there was 2 curb stops that were replaced and a leaking repair or leaking service that was repaired. And that takes us into the data submission and confirmation or question period.
Thank you. Is there any questions from council? Yes, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Very detailed report. Thank you very much, more than I'll ever know. Just a question, potassium manganate, that is where the water has a tendency of turning either brown or pink in the heat of the summer, am I correct?
Correct, that is the
So
chemical.
is there anything in advance that we could do to alleviate getting to that point? Is there anything that can happen so we don't get to that point in time again?
Thank you. Potassium permanganate has a kind of a different threshold. So in the summer, when the manganese is higher in the lake, we have to add more to remove it, but after there is a point break. So if there is a touch too much, then it turns pink. However, we've been monitoring a lot more closely, in our in-house data every day, that we're keeping a very close in touch with that, so we know when it keep our dosages dialed in perfectly.
Thank you. So then with doing that, then that can certainly help alleviate that
Correct.
happening again here in the, very good, thank you.
Yes.
That's good news. Thank you.
Any other members of council? Councillor Olmsted?
Yeah, for the Deputy Mayor, along the same lines of questioning, I want to understand how you log the community complaints. So is that people contacting Aqua themselves? I noticed there was 11 community complaints logged. Just want to understand that.
Yeah, it's a combination. Either we're called directly or we're forwarded complaints from the township, usually through Lane or Deanna. And then they are logged in our facility logbook and our work order management system as separate events. So I'm able to track them throughout the year.
As I do know that through these issues with manganese, I think I was contacted probably 11 times in one day from the community, as it's very upsetting to them to see the brown water in their bathtubs or sinks or whatever. So I don't, maybe we can come up with a better reporting system. So I want it accurate, reflected. You know, obviously it was way more than 11 people had issues and contacted several of us and the mayor and everybody else. So I just want to be sure we're getting good information logged into the system. And I don't know how we do that better, whether we direct them to Aqua whenever they contact us, we forward them directly on to Aqua, or how we manage that. But again, it's about getting good information, and I want to be sure that that's accurately reflected in the reports. I'm sure that number is probably more like 100 during those incidents. Okay, thank you.
Just a step onto that. Is it logged through E11? And I accept that from a council perspective, if we receive a phone call, we need to either make sure that we call you and pass it on so it gets logged in, or encourage the resident to do so. So we have a responsibility too. But sorry, Lane, could you speak to E11?
I'll speak to that. So anywhere when a complaint is come to us by a councillor or to a user, we forward on to Aqua, and it's logged. I'm not sure if it could be one with during the months where we had high complaints. Maybe that it was grouped together as one complaint. I'm not sure if that was. Maybe you speak to that.
Yeah, typically, like whenever we get an address or a different resident, we will attend every residence and go from there. Typically, this system has a lot of ductile iron in the distribution system, which is a tendency to corrode and cause dirty water during high demand seasons. It is intensified in the summer, of course, but so flushing activities, hydrant use, stuff like that also cause more color to be noted in the distribution system than normal. As far as the complaints, typically everyone that we would receive, everyone would be documented, as well as a work order made with all the corrective actions mentioned, as well as anything that went forth to the homeowner beyond that. So perhaps, and my memory's not going to serve me great here, but when we were looking at the bylaw complaint reporting method, maybe there's something we can tag on to the online portion of that Aqua's a portion of that. So if somebody's making a complaint online with respect to kennels, or do you remember that conversation we had? Maybe there's something we can tag on to online that records that more properly.
And that's the E11 system. And that Is there a drop-down that you can specifically speak to water in the E11 complaint, the online complaint?
That is correct, there is an option on that, and it will go to myself or Deanna, and we forward on.
So maybe as council, we can tell our residents that they phone me, I can tell them to go on there, and that'll properly log the complaint then?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, great, thank you.
Good. Thank you for that. Any other questions from council? I have two. Sorry. Earlier, and I can't remember the name for it now, sorry, I'm scrolling back. Non-compliance due to the ministry inspections. The two schedules 13 and 16, where it talked about proper, basically processes. I just want to get assurances that we have taken into account these things and we have the proper processes in place that won't happen again.
Yes, part of our corrective actions is that we revised our sample calendars to ensure that only representative samples of THMs and HAs were collected going forward. And the report that was miscalculated was immediately revised and forwarded to the ministry.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. And the last one, I'm going to throw it back at staff. I don't have a planner here, but we have a planner. I noticed that in Beachburg, sorry, and I'm going back to make sure I use your language. Your distribution maintenance listed 2 new hookups in Beachburg. There's no hookups in Cobden, but I know we've been building in Cobden. Has there been no hookups in 2023 in Cobden?
If I may, what happened in Beachburg, there's actually 2 physical water services that were connected from the main to the property line. In Cobden, there's been development, which the services are already installed, so Aqua wouldn't have that. But internally, with our finance department, we'd track the water on, and that we create water billing.
And you probably don't have that number, but I'd just be curious how many new hookups in Cobden in 2023, if you can follow up with an email later or something. That's good. Unless you have it.
Our treasurer has it.
Okay.
We'll speak to it after the other report.
Perfect. Good. Any other questions from members of council? Nothing. We'll move on to Haley's, please.
Okay, so looking at Haley again, there was 2 inspections due to MECP scheduling. The first one was a 91.23%, and the second one had a rating of 100%. Again, 1 audit completed in February by SII Global for our DWQMS, and then we had 1 complaint as a result of low pressure. Haley has 2 groundwater production wells. Due to the nature of the wells, there's no additional treatment required besides disinfection, so chlorine is dosed here, and then there's a 12-meter long pipeline that provides contact for disinfection to occur, and then it is pumped to distribution. There is a pressure tank on site to help maintain pressure in the distribution system, and that's located at Sullivan Street. There was no adverse water quality incidents here or issues of non-compliance, just 3 that were identified in the ministry inspection. 1 being a result of paperwork that was delayed to the ministry, and that was an emission summary table for the generator replacement. And the other 2 were issues with sampling. The first one being a record was missing in our internal documents that we weren't able to prove what the chlorine residual was, and the second one was an issue of being sampled outside of the date range. So a system like Haley needs samples taken not less than 10 but not more than 20, and we collected a sample on day 21, causing the non-compliance. Moving on to our raw water flows with the 2 wells, there were maximum flow rate exceedances, both less than a minute, so they were non-reportable. 1 being due to a spike when the plant restarted after the chlorine injectors were cleaned. The second one being from the generator battery being changed, and then the generator starting and repowering the plant. This takes us into the treated water flows, also trending downwards in Haley. And then our microbiological testing and operational testing, no issues of non-compliance here. Haley's a little bit different due to the nature of it being a small system, that our inorganic and organic parameters are only tested every 60 months. Nitrates and nitrates are tested quarterly, and sodium and fluoride are tested every 5 years. So there were no half-MAC exceedances for these facilities. With respects to our regular organics and inorganics, the last reported sodium exceeded in 2019. That was our MAC exceedance. And then our THMs here are well below, and our HAAs are well below our MACs. As far as maintenance goes, it was just related to the generator with the battery being replaced. And I'll take questions for that one now. It's a lot smaller, so there's not so much to go through.
Thank you. Any questions from members of council? Yes, Councillor Tabbert?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, why were the fire hydrants disconnected in Haley's, and will they be reconnected?
I can do that. So back in 2008 to 2010, the entire distribution system in Haley Town site was redone. It was done to a smaller line, so it only has a 2-inch water line that surrounds the whole thing, and there wasn't. And the fire flow that was in Haley wasn't sufficient. So I thought that's why it was taken out that time.
And one more question. I was just reading here that the wells were put in 2005 and 2006, but I thought the system was a lot older than that. Am I missing something?
Got any more on that line?
I believe that there was new wells installed, but I can follow up when the previous wells were installed.
Okay, so these are new wells.
That's correct.
Any other questions from members of council? No, and I'll just confirm there was no new hookups in Haley's. Unfortunately, they're at 35%. Okay. Good. Any final questions or comments from staff? Oh, Councillor Moore, please.
To continue on with what Councillor Tablet asked about the hydrants, that was part of the magnesium mine that was there, and that original subdivision was for the workers, so that's why they had the fire hydrants there, was to protect their workers and their families. And that line went ahead to the mine and then across the road to, at that time, Haley Industries. So that was strictly lake water, and there is a lake, if you look at the map, Pump House Lake. That's where the water came from. And that's why it was shut down, because the municipality didn't have the water flow to put into a hydrant. They just went with drinking water, and then the rest is history. Does that answer your question? Okay. And maybe the guests may understand that a little bit or two. They weren't here at that time, but that's how that went. Thank you.
Perfect. Yes,
To be honest, I just thought it was recent because it was in the report. That's why I thought maybe it just happened.
Perfect. Any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none. Oh, yes, Treasurer, please.
I'll just speak to the increase of units between 2023 2024. So water units, there was an increase of 7 overall units. And then for wastewater, there was an increase of 12.5 from the 2023 to 2024.
Perfect. And you speak in terms of units because
everything
some
is,
places may be more than one unit.
no, so units are based on our weighting system. Mm-hmm. So everything is based off of the residential unit. A small commercial is 1 residential unit, a medium commercial is 1.5 units, and a high commercial, per our qualifications, is a 2 unit. Counts as 2 residential units, so that's how it works out.
Okay. So overall, we had nine hookups to our system as a whole in 2023 units.
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you for that amplification. Good. If there's no other questions, thank you so much for that report. I appreciate the opportunity to take these time for questions, and we'll call for a vote. All those in favor? And it's carried. Thank you. Next item. Cobden Wastewater Treatment Plant, the annual report for 2023. The recommendation is the Council Township of Whitewater Region receive this report for information purposes as it relates to the Cobden Wastewater Treatment Plant operations. And I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Moore, seconded by Deputy Mayor. Superintendent Nicholson.
Thanks. We're here tonight to talk about the 2023 annual report for the Cobden Wastewater Treatment Plant. So unlike water, there's not a really strong regulatory requirement for us to present to council, but we feel it's necessary to keep everybody up to date on how this plant is operating. And I also want to point out that much of the information that we've discussed regarding the overflows, the bypasses in 2023, we've previously discussed back in the spring. So a lot of the information in here is a duplicate of what was already discussed. So on that note, I will again pass it over to Aqua.
Thank you. So looking into our sewage report, we did have one ministry inspection last year, in September, with the Ministry of Environment. We had 2 non-compliance events that'll be discussed in detail throughout the report. 2 complaints that'll also be discussed later in the report. Like Deanna said, 3 overflows and 1 bypass that were discussed last spring, but detailed again in this report. And then no sewage main blockages, but 2 lateral blockages. So for those that have not toured the wastewater plant yet, it's a Class 3 facility. It uses the existing manual bar screens and preliminary treatment from the old plant before making its way to an equalization tank. From here, it heads up into 2 rotary screen drums where rags and solids are further removed before making its way into secondary treatment. Secondary treatment here is made up of an aeration tank and a membrane filtration tank. In the aeration tank, Past 8 is injected. It's a chemical used at our water treatment plants as well. Rather than assisting in the solid settling, it's used as a phosphorus reducing agent. Our filters here are ultrafiltration fibers, so water is squeezed out, or I guess through them, and then it is hit with UV light to be disinfected before heading back out into Muskrat River, and subsequently Muskrat Lake. Any sludge produced in the process is wasted into activated sludge tanks outside the plant. This is then either decanted and thickened, with the decant heading back to the headworks of the facility and the sludge then being treated by the centrifuge on site. That is further dewatered, and then the solids are taken to landfill. Looking at our treatment flows for last year, we did experience high flows in the spring freshet. On average, we saw 846 cubic meters a day, or 84% of our facility's rated capacity. We did see higher flows last year, and that's evident in our annual flow comparison with it trending upwards. Though this facility is not currently equipped to receive leachate or septage, it is required in our ECA to report on if we have received any. In this case, we haven't. We have raw sewage quality detailed over the past 5 years. It should be noted that in total ammonia, that's where our first non-compliance event happened. An incorrect chain of custody was used during our monthly sampling, so the parameter of total ammonia nitrogen was missed. In its place, total calhalgyl nitrogen was sampled. Looking at our effluent quality, our CBOD, or carbaceous biochemical oxygen demand, total suspended solids, E. coli, all remain below our facility's objectives. Objectives are non-reportable, more of an operational target for us, so we aim to be below these. And we do have a summary of what actions were taken when those objectives were exceeded. And there was 1 exceedance of our total ammonia nitrogen limit that I'll go into detail in our objective and limit exceedance summaries. We have the 12 samples, or I guess averages, from the samples collected throughout the year detailed. So you can see where the spikes had occurred, with total ammonia nitrogen being in February. The limit was exceeded here as a result of the blower VFDs, or variable frequency drives, being adjusted in an effort to conserve energy. So total ammonia and nitrogen is combated by dissolved oxygen. As the blowers are running at a higher rate, our total ammonia nitrogen was lower. And when we had adjusted the VFDs and lowered the rate that the blowers were producing dissolved oxygen, our ammonia crept up. So it was a matter of getting to the sweet spot for us to remain compliant with that. The other deviations occurred in September and December with E. coli. Or sorry, this is looking at sample calendar deviations. I've got ahead of myself. All right, our second issue with our operating problem that we ran into in 2023 was a result of the spring freshet with the daily flow rates exceeding our facility's rated capacity that we've spoken to. Looking at the corrective actions that were taken, it was June and September for our total phosphorus objective that was exceeded. And in this case, it was a matter of adjusting our passate injection rate so that it met what was coming into the facility. Details of the abnormal discharge events are summarized in Appendix D that I'll go over later. There was no other spills or spills of sewage in the collection system to be reported. And then repairs that occurred last year mostly had to do with, I guess, finishing up work at the old plant to ensure that sanitary waste was making its way to the new facility to be treated. There was some alarm monitoring upgrades at the Morton Street lift station, as well as a flow meter that was replaced and a lateral that was repaired. This takes us into the sludge generation. Our ECA does have a provision that we're able to haul liquid sludge off-site in the event that the centrifuge is not operational or if there is maintenance being performed. In this case, there was no liquid sludge hauled off-site last year. The centrifuge processed approximately 4,200 cubic meters of liquid sludge, which resulted in 363,000 kilograms making its way to the landfill. And I have this detailed again in an annual comparison, our volume hauled per year versus the weight hauled now that the centrifuge is operational. And then the complaints that happened last year were the lateral backups at 29 Gould Street and 6 Arthur Street. I'll skip ahead to Appendix C and just quickly summarize the bypass and overflow events of last year. The bypass was a result of the UV reactor being, I guess, out of service due to the overflow events, and this was reported to the ministry, and the facility overflows were in April and May of last year, also reported to the ministry. And I guess now is a good time to take questions.
Good. Thank you so much. Lots of detail, and I see people still scanning. But is there questions? Members of council? Yes, Councillor Moore.
You mentioned one comment about making sure the flow got diverted from the old system to the new system. The old system's still in play?
It was the domestic waste line that was within the office, and like the plumbing from the interior of the existing old building just had to be carried over into the headworks of the new building.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? Yes, Councillor Bell.
I believe in the last report, last time you were here talking to us, the management for spring operations with that increased flow in the spring, I believe you spoke to increased cleaning moving up to the increased flow season in the spring. Mm-hmm. Is that underway as of now? Was that completed back in February or January, or what's the timeline on that, and how's that been working?
We've been conducting weekly cleanings at this point. The CIPs are the clean in place, which are the rather large cleans, which are done every second week at this rate. The smaller ones, the CEBs, are done every week, and we've been monitoring it constantly all throughout last year. So our flows now we're starting to see are down into about 800, which is substantially less than what we observed last year at this time. They're almost down to a summer level would be 650, 700 cubes a day. and we're at 800 today, so they're coming down quite nicely.
So how much of that, so this year is a little bit of an abnormal year where probably there's not a whole lot of, we're not seeing the same flow as last spring. But with the cleaning schedule, you're pretty confident that that's resolved the issue that you've seen from the previous spring?
We are working with H2O Innovation, the supplier of the membranes, to further get our transmembrane pressures down. And we're confident that we can get them back down, back to a better level in moving forward.
Any other questions from members of council? I just had one question about the sludge, and I know currently, sorry, is sludge the right word? I think so, right? There's no other word for it? Okay, good. So the sludge is currently being used in our landfill. Are there other options to be able to use that sludge in other locations, or is it restricted by the guidelines outlined by the province?
So I can speak to that. There are potentially opportunities for land application of sludge. That is something that it's not so much the municipality that leads that, it's the farmers that would be wanting to accept that waste. They receive a license to be able to accept it and then go out looking for places to take it. So that is potentially something that would be we could investigate. It is something to be looked into for sure.
And it would just be one less thing going into our landfill.
Correct. It's just a matter of whether or not our sludge is of the appropriate quality in order for those farms to be able to take it. So, and there are also some considerations for what time of the year they could take that material. So it's typically they're not able to accept waste during the winter time. So that is also something to consider, but it is something that we have been looking into. But again, the driver is on the farm's side of things to have their licensing in place to be able to accept it, and then reach out.
Okay, something that I think worth a discussion offline, but I'm just curious whether or not we can use that to benefit our farms, save landfill space, make it a win for everybody, but I think we need to understand a little bit more about it. The second thing I just want to recognize for those members of the public that are watching, some of the discussions we're seeing about the flow rates being high and infiltration and what's the other I? Inflow and infiltration that might be causing it, i.e. we see the increase in the flows in the spring, suggesting that there's groundwater infiltrating the system and therefore being processed through the plant. Those things we have asked our water and wastewater task force to look into to see if there's recommendations they could come back to council with. So there is some work being done on some of the issues that were raised. I just wanted to publicly recognize that. And Councillor Moore, Councillor Olmsted, it's in your wheelhouse. It's good. CEO, you want to add anything to that? Good. Excellent. No other questions? Good. We'll call for a vote to receive the report. All those in favor? And it's carried. Thank you so much. Oh, you have another item? Yes,
one
please.
One more quick update. I'm sure this is what you've seen last week. We had a sodium exceedance at Hila, which has been ongoing in our reports for 2008. So the sodium sample is conducted on a 5-year schedule. It's a aesthetic objective. The maximum allowable, not maximal allowable, what's the word I'm looking for? Okay, it is the MAC, is 20 milligrams per liter. Hila came in at 65.5 this year. And as well, Beachburg exceeded this year as well with 27.4. This is a naturally occurring issue like in groundwater with in surface and in wells. It's naturally occurring in the minerals in the ground, so we are monitoring it. It is an aesthetic objective, and we're working with the health unit to tweak, say, our communication with the public on this. So, yes, we're working on that. Do you have anything to add?
I think so.
Good. Thank you for the additional information. Just before I open it up to council members, if you have any questions about sodium levels, I just want to confirm those numbers, just because we gave them publicly. Can we confirm the numbers that we reported in January?
The first numbers reported that triggered the AWQI were 27.4 milligrams per liter in Beachburg and 69.1 milligrams per liter in Haley. As per OREG 170's corrective action, resampling occurred, and the second set of samples resulted in 24.7 milligrams per liter in Beachburg and 65.5 milligrams per liter in Haley.
Perfect. I just wanted to make sure that those numbers were all clear. If a member of the public was listening, and they line up with the media release. Good. Questions, members of council? Councillor Moore.
So is there anything we can do to remove that salt, or it's strictly what's coming out of the ground and we have to live with it?
Currently, at this time, that's correct. We don't have a process in place that removes sodium out of the water. It's just, that's what we have to live with right now.
So then the second question, if this triggered a second test, how come we're not continuing to test then to show us when the levels go down, or this is it, we don't test for another 5 years?
We are going to do supplemental samples just to confirm these numbers, but yeah, currently we're regulated to do them on a 5-year cycle.
Okay, thank you.
And Councillor Tappert.
Do we have the numbers from 5 years ago? I'm sure we probably saw it, but
So from 2019 in Beachburg was 9 milligrams per liter, and in Haley Station in the same date of 2019, January 3rd, was 45 milligrams per liter.
Yeah, and those are in that report too.
Correct.
Good. Any other questions from members of council? Councillor Trim.
But I understand the aesthetic limit is 200. So it's well below that.
That's correct.
Okay.
Correct, sorry, I didn't fully describe that to the best of my ability, I guess. Yes, the top end is 200. What we have to report it on is 20. Anything over 20 has to be reported, and yes.
CEO comments?
Yeah, if I could just confirm with staff, it's my understanding that letters were sent to the property owners in the users in the village of Beachburg and Haley town site on Monday. If that could just be confirmed through you, manager, if you will, please. Thanks.
Sorry, that is correct.
So the letters are, it's a letter from the Renfrew County District Health Unit, and there's also a frequently asked questions that's attached to it. So it just describes the results of the testing and what residents should do if they have sodium restricted diets, essentially to contact their physician. So it provides additional details on what this means to the resident and for those who may be impacted, what to do as for next steps. Thanks so much.
Perfect. If I can just ask that enclosure, a PDF of it gets distributed to council in the event that we get questions or have access to it immediately. Good. Any other questions? I'm going to just throw one at, and I noticed in doing the research of the sodium situation that a number of other public health units had coordinated with the municipalities to do annual testings of sodium levels. Is that something that has been considered? Is it a recommendation that usually comes from a health unit? I'm not expecting an answer now, but if in conjunction with the health unit there's a need, I think we need to consider it. Manager?
Yes, maybe if Kelly, if you can speak to the actual process and the actual and who determines the corrective action.
So the reason we sample 5 years is because it's regulated by the ministry. Speaking with our local inspector, he doesn't see a need to do increased sampling or any additional supplemental. Of course, if the health unit issues that, we're certainly happy to do it. Based on getting a sample that exceeds 20 milligrams per liter, it's reported as an AWQI, and then the follow-up corrective action of resampling occurs. Once that resampling occurs, it's either still remaining above 20 or not. Regardless, it's closed as it's only reportable once within 57 months, and that's when the health unit is able to issue their additional corrective actions. To notify the public, it comes from the health unit itself for the additional notification, not the ministry, whereas the frequency of the sampling generally comes from the ministry, if that clears it up.
Good. Any other questions? Okay, thank you for that supplemental information. Good. Next item on the agenda. We did. We voted first and then went back and discussed.
I don't think so. I think.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good. We can redo it. So I'll just call for a vote on item 9.2, which is receiving this report for information purposes. All those in favor? And it's carried. Awesome. Good. The next item, 9.3, is the Whitewater Seniors Homes. Just before you leave, thank you so much for providing that report. The Whitewater Seniors Home Support and Active Living Working Group location. So the recommendation is that the Council of Township Whitewater Region authorize, 1, the use of the municipal facility located at 2022 Foresters Falls Road, formerly Foresters Falls Library, to operate as a storefront to support the Whitewater Seniors Active Living Center, SELC, and Aging Well at Home programs. An in-kind contribution to the SELC funding of plus or minus $35,400. A mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Trim, seconded by Councillor Bell. And this is going to Manager Plevin.
Good evening, everyone. So in 2021, the Whitewater Seniors Pilot Project began with the introduction of the Whitewater Seniors Home Support and Active Living Working Group. The Whitewater senior staff, with the help of this working group, have continued to work with the community volunteers and service providers to provide the programming and opportunities to seniors in Whitewater Region. This would include Meals on Wheels, events, programming, community outreach. This program has also assisted residents with providing food security, social inclusion, volunteering, communication, community support, as well as referrals to help with future planning. The Whitewater Seniors Community Needs Assessment and Age-Friendly Community Plan in 2021 outlined a number of priorities and themes. Some involved engaging seniors, coordinating services, and system-level advocacy. The Whitewater Seniors programs continued to grow, and so has the number of staff. Staff now require space for programming, storage, as well as office space for day-to-day operations. Events and programs will still continue to be operated out of other locations within the township. The Whitewater Seniors Working Group has discussed considerations for a storefront, and based on the availability of the 2022 Foresters Falls Road, Foresters Falls Library location, the recommendation that they've considered is to move forward with providing the in-kind donation within the SALC grant and allowing staff the opportunity to provide the storefront for a recognizable space for seniors in the Whitewater region. If anybody has any questions.
Go to the mover first, Councillor Trim.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, this has been something that the Whitewater seniors have been looking for some time. Myself and a board member, a group member, Moira Doe, we checked everywhere for some sort of a suitable, appropriate, accessible storefront facility. Ideally, Beachburg is more central, although programs are offered all over our community. Foresters Falls, Westmeath, La Paz, in different locations. And so a storefront isn't absolutely needed, but it's a good idea. It's nice that people can drop in. we were not able to find such a place. And so coincidentally, this space became available. It's not centrally located in the municipality, but it's a nice space, and programming will be offered there as well as the other places. It will be available for drop-in. Also, it doesn't preclude the other groups, such as the Historical Society, from using the space. And the in-kind amount you see there does not affect our current budget, because that reflects the rent that the group would be getting for free, and the staff support that is municipal staff support that is being provided. So that satisfies the necessity for the municipality to provide some of the funding. And in this case, it's in kind and does not affect the budget. So with that, I certainly am happy to move this motion, and I understand that the move will take place as soon as the space becomes vacant. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Trim, and I'll go to Councillor Bell as the seconder.
Yeah, just a point of clarification. So with the Whitewater seniors taking over or potentially taking over this space, I was approached by the Historical Society as well, and maybe partnering up with whoever took over that space, or with whoever's going to be managing that moving forward. So just by your comment earlier, there would be nothing stopping from other organizations and partnering up with the Whitewater, or sorry, with the seniors living to potentially use that space for different things throughout the year, or potentially partner up with them. There's that, but they would have to interact with Whitewater seniors to coordinate that moving forward. Is that correct?
Yeah, I see that the program, yes, you're correct. I think that, if another group wishes to utilize the space, we could certainly make that work. I think I see this as a function of a satellite office for the municipality, and I think it should be programmed so that if we have open houses similar to what we had in Westmeath and in Cobden this week, we could utilize that space as well. So for other organizations and as well as ours. So yes, we can make it available for other situations. Thanks.
Perfect. And I know the Deputy Mayor had her hand up earlier, so I'll go to her.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Just a comment. So Councillor Tabbert and myself both sit on the library board, and it was a tough decision we made many months ago that we would have to close that due to lack of patronage. So I kind of see this as a win-win situation. It would have been a dormant, empty space if we weren't able to utilize it or fill it. So I think it's just a great opportunity for the Whitewater seniors to have this and to have some space, because they've been pretty cramped where they've been. So they're going to have, I'm sure they'll be very happy and very pleased with their new location. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Any other comments or questions from members of council? Good. I just want to make one clear, just in case anybody's wondering about the additional staff, all funded through provincial funds. I just wanted to make sure that was clear. So the staff running our seniors group has been, through the work of our working group and the volunteers that are advocating on behalf of our seniors, we've secured the funding in order to make this happen. And it's all come together. So thank you for that work. No other questions? We'll call for a vote. All those in favor? And it's carried. Thank you. Next item is the Housing Enabling Water Systems Fund application. The recommendation is that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region direct staff to apply for a grant under the Housing Enabling Water Systems Fund. A mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Moore, seconded by Councillor Olmsted. Excellent. Going Manager, Public Works.
Yeah, thank you. This is a funding announcement that was done through the province 2023 fall economic statement. It's exciting news that there's a fund out there for core infrastructure for water, wastewater, and storm. The fund is 200 million over 3 years, which the maximum a municipality can apply for up to 35 million, with cost sharing of a maximum of 73% by the province and 23% by the municipality. This funding announcement was on the announcement of to enable growth and housing opportunities, and decrease potable water, and also increase treatment and increased treatment of wastewater and stormwater. The funding deadline is April 19th, which staff identified 3 projects, which is the Cobden water treatment plant, filter replacement, Cobden water, wastewater, and storm replacement. And additionally, water conservation in Cobden. If you attach the attached map, staff are recommending to proceed with the actual on-street replacement of water, water, wastewater, and storm, as shown as Simpson, Jason, Crawford, Meadow, and Asherlab. Why this is selecting the staff are recommending this project, that it will assist in the two subdivisions that are related on Asherlab, and then the other one in the Red Phase 3. And just to note that the 2 streets are shovel-ready that are designed are Crawford and Simpson Street, which would require the remaining streets to be designed. If successful in the project, it would be designed over 2024, and then with construction in the following years. This is a large project, would probably take multiple years to complete. And funds would be identified in 2025 budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from councillors? And I'll turn to Councillor Moore as the mover first.
This is good news. Some of them sections, Simpson Street is one of them, has been talked about for many years. There's been problems there, so it'd be nice to get some of this completed, and hopefully patch up some of our possible leaks and maybe find out where some of the extra water is coming into our systems. And it's a win-win situation if we get the money. Thank you.
Good. And Councillor Olmsted, seconder.
Yeah, I concur with Councillor Moore. I agree it'd be a great fund to achieve, and lots of work needs to be done in our region, especially in-ground work. So I think this would be a great get if we can get it. Thank you.
And Councillor Bell.
Just wondering if there's any estimate on what that 27% might represent at this point. Like, do we have any idea of what the cost for this project would be versus the other 2 that were talked about?
Staff, we're still just in the early stages of applying for this for the application, which is a very large application to complete. Staff quickly identified, which we'll work through, actually getting a detailed cost estimate, but the portion that is estimated at between 1 and 1.5 million, and that's various items through eligible products as water and wastewater through the fund, and then the additional which could be funded through other funds like OSIF, for example.
So that 1.5 million represents the cost of the total project, or 1.5 million is the expected 27% that the township is going to be looking at spending?
That's for the entire project. So it'd be. Yes.
No, point of clarification there. I think the project cost would be in the range of about $4 to $5 million.
That's correct.
The 1 to 1.5 is probably the 27%.
So the 27% is that 1.5
That's correct.
million that we're looking at.
And
Okay.
we're reviewing funding sources in preparation of filing the application. Other funding sources, I mean, the roads could be funded through general taxation. The water and wastewater we recognize has always been funded by the users, but there are some water reserves. There's OCIF we could utilize as well, and the grant itself. And there's also development charges. So Astrolab Road, it's a modification from a semi-urban to full urban was part of the development charges study. So we could use the funds that we've collected through DCs for that as well. So I think it's in the range of about 190,000 we have now. In 250,000. So we're going to be able to utilize those funds as well. Thanks.
And what about other grants to go on top of this funding? Like, are you able to apply for several, like, other grants related to portions of this infrastructure, or is it?
So I can answer to that one. So they've kind of locked it out that it's specifically you can use federal grants on top of it, but there's no other provincial grants other than OCIF is what they've allowed. However, we can use our CCBF funding as well for that portion, which at this point in time, CCBF and OCIF tend to be just put to road projects. So the expected next year OCIF is around $750,000, give or take. CCBF has been about the same for the last 2 years, so it'll be about 200,000. So right there, you're sitting about $950,000 of that total amount, which would be spread over 2 years because it's not a one-year project type of thing. So there would still be areas in the budget to do other roads while still doing that project.
Any other questions? Question for me is the subdivisions, the potential of further development off of Astrolab. Those subdivision developments include the upgrading of pipes and systems in the ground to support the subdivision. Does this take that into consideration as well?
Yeah, so we would work with the developer. There's multiple options that the planner is working with the development engineering firm. And if this project was successful, that would help the growth of the subdivision to actually use Astrolab instead of going through through the field. Sorry. Yeah, and what the CEO mentioned that there is some DC money which could be used to fund.
Perfect. Any other questions? Just to highlight again, when we did our delegation with Ministry of Infrastructure Parliamentary Assistant, we mentioned and presented on the fact that we were going to apply for this. The second thing, and I'll just get staff to confirm that I'm correct, but the water and wastewater rate studies would have factored in us having to replace the linear infrastructure on these streets, and that rate study would have assumed we were covering 100% of the cost. So a grant such as this that covers 73% of the cost gives us a direct savings in our water wastewater study. So this is just one small, well, not as a big example, but an example from our water wastewater task force of ways that we can leverage provincial and federal monies to help keep our rates as low as possible. So I think it's a great approach and I'm supportive of it. Is there any other comments? Yeah, Councillor Trim?
Just a question, Mr. Mayor, through to Manager of Public Works. When can we expect whether we're successful in our application?
Yes, I believe it's summer of 2024.
Good. Thank you. I can imagine this is a significant application, a large dollar value with a lot of engineering, but valuable, needs to be done anyway, and we'll continue to try to press for federal and provincial monies to support us. Good. If there's no questions, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? And it's carried. Next item is closure and conveyance of an unopened road allowance. The recommendation is that the Council of the Township Whitewater Region approve a bylaw authorizing the closure and conveyance of the lands described as Part 1 of Plan 49R 2494. A mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Trim, Councillor Olmsted. And this is going to CAO.
Yeah, thanks so much. So the present report is with respect to an unopened road allowance that is held partially by the township and the township of Whitewater region, the township of Horton. So this unopened road allowance is in fact the unopened road allowance that is the border between our two communities. So one of our southern sections of our border. So Butternut Lane is accessed by Service Road, which connects to Chenot Road, and Service Road is a road that gives access sort of to Garden Lake. So it's one of the main entry points to Garden Lake. So any property owners fronting on that lake would use Service Road off of Chenot Road. So back in 2019, the township became aware of several structures, accessory structures, that is. So there were a total of I think it's 3 accessory structures that were located on the unopened road allowance and a corner of a cottage that was built on the unopened road allowance. So this is back in 2019. So we engaged with the landowner. The landowner then followed suit with their title insurance, and it became sort of a discussion amongst the lawyers. But ultimately, we've come to a point where the township has accepted that all of the accessory structures be relocated off of the road allowance, which has occurred. We've confirmed that this week. And that we would stop up and close a small portion of the unopened road allowance. A corner of the cottage would be stopped up, closed, and sold to the adjacent landowner so that she could own the land on which her cottage is located. So this will finalize this process. This is all being done in accordance with an encroachment agreement that was signed between the township and the landowner, and that was reviewed by council back in January 2023. This is the last step in a long exercise for somebody who built without permits on our property, and we're trying to rectify it and find resolution. So staff are supportive of the approach, and we're just looking for council's concurrence. Thanks so much.
Thank you, CAO. Mover is Councillor Trim.
Yes, a question, Mr. Mayor, through to the CAO. Does Part 1 include a setback?
It certainly does. It was, I believe, if I recall correctly, it was about 1.5 meters from the home, so that would represent 5 feet.
And if I may, also, again, through to the CAO, I'm assuming that all costs, legal, transfer of title, and registering of title will be assumed by the property owner.
So the original encroachment agreement, so the answer is no. So the township has a responsibility to deal with the matter. Originally, the proposal was that a sum of money would be transferred to the township in lieu of legal fees. However, in order to resolve the matter, that was removed. They are providing a transfer of sums for the said land. So there is a transfer of funds in relation to the lands, but essentially the township is responsible in this case to deal with the matter. Thanks.
And I should have mentioned, including in that, the survey. Again, Mr. Mayor, through to CAO, how does the cost of the survey factor into this? And is it important for council to know how much this will cost us in the end?
So the original survey was in fact prepared by the neighboring property owner in the township of Horton, and the landowner with whom we have this agreement with prepared another survey to confirm the data. So we've incurred no cost for surveying, only legal costs, and in fact staff time. Yes.
Excellent. And the seconder was Councillor Olmsted.
Yeah, I recall this file from a year or two ago, and I think it's a good solution to all parties. So I think we move forward with it. Thank you.
Any other questions, Councillor Tabbert?
What about the covered pad? Was that removed as well with the other 3 buildings?
Yes, it was. And the other requirement was that they build a fence so that to try to mitigate impacts to the neighbors, because this all arose as a result of concerns from the neighbors to the south in the township of Horton. So a fence was also constructed pursuant to our requirements. Yeah, thanks.
At their expense. Excellent. Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Carried. Next item is the Community Safety and Policing Act. A recommendation that the Council of Township Whitewater Region approve the recommendation to appoint Councillor Connie Tabbert, Lead of Protective Services, as a member of the Renfrew OPP Detachment Board, and Councillor Chris Olmsted, Co-Lead of Protective Services, as the alternate member of the Renfrew OPP Detachment Board for the tenure of council. A mover and a seconder, please. Now, I'm going to ask the clerk, can she move when she's named in a motion?
I don't think so.
Okay, so I'm going to ignore you. Deputy Mayor and Councillor Moore. Good. And which staff is leading this? Clerk.
So this has been coming for quite some time. In 2019, the government passed, or the provincial government passed the community self, oh, I'm sorry, we did. So let's start again. April 1st, 2024, the Community Safety Policing Act will replace the current Policing Service Act that's currently the Act. So the township sits on 2 police boards. One is the Renfrew OPP Detachment and the other is the Ottawa Valley Detachment. The township declined to participate in the Ottawa Valley Detachment Board on the understanding that our services would not be impacted if we didn't have a board member on that detachment, because they're pretty good with information sharing, engagement, and policing matters. So the township did decide that we will sit on the Renfrew OPP Detachment Board. This newly created board will consist of 11 members. So there'll be 7 council members, 1 from each Arnprior, Greater Madawaska, McNabb, Braeside, Adamston, Bromley, Horton, Renfrew, and us. There'll be 2 community appointees, 1 resident from either Arnprior, Greater Madawaska, or McNabb, Braeside, and 1 resident from either Adamston, Bromley, Horton, Renfrew, or Whitewater region. And then there'll be 2 provincial appointees. One of the requirements for this new act is that that anybody sitting currently on the police board will not automatically be appointed, but all appointees to the detachment are required to be done by resolution. Some other noticeable changes that all meetings will be open to the public. Board members will be required to be trained. This training may include rules and responsibilities, human rights, and some procedural training. And it's possible that without the training, the board members will not have a vote. Even they may sit on the board, but they may not be allowed to vote. And there might be a requirement for a police check before the approval of a board member is finalized. So the first step in this process is to appoint by resolution a board member, and it is recommended by staff that lead and co-lead of protected services be appointed to this board. The next step will be appointing the community member, but I believe once all the established council members are in place, they will constitute a quorum for the meeting, and then the next step will move on. So if there's any questions.
Perfect. Thank you. Deputy Mayor is the mover.
No, I think it's pretty and congratulations. And I'm sure you'll do a great job on there for us. Thank you.
Councillor Moore, seconder.
Just that it's been a long time coming, and I'm glad that we finally got to this stage, so congratulations.
Good. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Olmsted?
I agree, Councillor Tabbert. Congratulations.
Thick is what he's saying. Good. Was there, sorry, did I see your hand go up, Councillor Trim? Or no, CAO, you had a comment?
Yeah, I would just add that there are honorariums for the holding of the position. So as being a member, you will receive honorariums. And there is what we are working through with the town of Renfrew is that they would conduct all clerical services, so the agenda preparation, the minutes, and we would contribute to that cost to a small sum, maybe $1,000 a year. So that would be incorporated in the 2025 budget. Thanks.
Good. No other questions or comments? We'll call for a vote. All those in favor? And it's carried. Thank you. Good. What I'd like to propose is just another short recess. We'll take 5 minutes for a bio break, and we'll come back for the last 2 or 3 items. And welcome back to the Township of Whitewater Region's regular council meeting for Wednesday, March 20th. And I'll call us back to order at 6:57 p.m. Our next item on the agenda is a notice of motion. This was a notice that was provided by Councillor Bell in February, I believe. So this is subsequent to the notice is his actual motion. So, and it has to do with fire department first response capacity. The recommendation is, and I'm not going to read the whereases, but they're there available for you. But now, therefore, be it resolved that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region directs staff to 1. Investigate the cost and impact of increasing the level of service of the Whitewater Region Fire Department to provide first response basic life support level of care, including defibrillator, artificial respiration, and CPR. And 2, direct staff to engage with the County of Renfrew paramedics. It's been, and my mover is Councillor Bell, and a seconder, Councillor Tabbert. And it comes back to Councillor Bell. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. So the reason I wanted to move this and kind of investigate this level of service, obviously part of it goes to my background. So I was a paramedic here in the county for a number of years, work as a firefighter now. And one of the things with our township, we're pretty poorly covered just by the bases that are available through Renfrew County paramedics. So we're basically serviced by Pembroke on one end, Renfrew on one end, Eganville on one end, which basically limits the access to, or immediate access to, paramedic care in our area. There's been a little bit of increased coverage with the community paramedic program that does some work in the area, but just through my experience there, at any given time, if you're calling 911 for somebody whose heart stopped or has gone unconscious in basically the Westmeath, La Paz, Foresters Falls area, a lot of times it's 35 minutes until you get an ambulance to your front door. Number one indicators for survival if somebody's heart stops beating is early access to defibrillator, early access to CPR. So basically by leveraging a service that we already provide in volunteer fire, I'd like to investigate what the cost would be and the availability of our volunteer firefighters to provide the level of care that's basically included in the motion there, being the defibrillator, CPR, and artificial respiration. That obviously comes at a cost, with cost of training, cost of having those people be available and responding to those calls, as well as the potential for a lack of availability of those individuals. But that's basically what I'd like investigated, to see if we can start providing that level of service to, 1, increase the level of service at a relatively low cost to the people here in the township, residents of Whitewater, as well as assist the paramedics whenever they get on scene, because one of the things that's lacking is extra support for those medics that show up. Just as a small indication, in the city, whenever somebody gets called for an unconscious, you have the paramedics showing up, you have fire showing up, and you have police showing up. So you can have anywhere from 8 to 11 sets of hands on scene to move patients, help with CPR, help with managing that scene. Here, a lot of the times you're showing up 2 people. Sometimes they're on a second story of an old farmhouse with, 2-foot wide hallways. You have to deal with not only dealing with the patient and the medical situation that's happening, but also the logistics of getting those people out into the ambulance and on the way to the hospital for further care. So that's basically the background of why I wanted to investigate this. I think it's an opportunity that we have here, and I hope we can kind of make this work.
Thanks, Councillor Bell. And Councillor Tabbert, the seconder, do you have a comment or questions?
Yes, I did speak to Fire Chief Jonathan McLaren about this motion because it's been discussed before by previous councils, and he said he thinks it's a good time to investigate it, and he's in favor of it, so I second it for him.
Thanks, Councillor Tabbert. Any other questions or comments from members of council and I'll turn to Councillor Trim first.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's no, I too, I'm going to vote in favor of investigating this, but I'm going to be very concerned about increased costs. There's no question that everything that Councillor Bell has said is true, and there's no question that you know, there's lots of ways that we could improve our services, but it all comes at a cost, and we're already talking about decreasing services in other areas. So I'm hoping that this could happen with a very minimal cost. And we already have medical assist, which is part of what has been presented. But yes, the cost is a concern to me. We just can't have this service creep happening where we're increasing here and there, little by little, and then we get to the point where we're turning roads back to gravel. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Other comments or questions? No? Good. So one question to staff. You have your work plan for the set out already in the year. We're inserting a new project. Is this something that we're capable of taking on at this time?
I would say that when we provide an update to council in August, or July and August on the work plan, any items that would get postponed, perhaps to a later quarter or subsequent year, would be identified at that stage. So this appears to be, as noted by council here, if it gets approved or gets moved, then it's a priority, and we'll investigate it as time permits. And we've got to recognize that the member of staff that'll lead this is a part-time employee. So we should expect that it will take some time to get back to council with the results of the findings. Thanks.
And Councillor Olmsted, that triggered something?
Yeah, just overall, I'm going to strongly support Councillor Bell's recommendation, or his, sorry, what's the proper term here, the notice of motion. Just holistically, if this saves one life, you know, what dollar value do you put on something like that? And we went through an incident in Cobden Arena just 2 or 3 weeks ago when we were getting ready to go out on the ice, and there was an incident. Turned out at this point to be nothing, but we waited 45 minutes for an ambulance to show up. Now, we had a defibrillator in the arena, and Jerry and the staff did a fantastic job at coordinating that, and we had a retired nurse beside the person, and but we had nobody that was trained in any of the stuff that the notice of motion is suggesting. You know, and it could be a firefighter from up the street or whoever that got notice of that and knew what the procedures were or knew how to follow some of the stuff that I'm sure is going to come out from those recommendations. So I'm going to strongly support the notice of motion. And again, if it saves a neighbor or saves a relative, and we all know that one person that could have used that extra 10 minutes of service to the front door to help out, the time means everything. So I'm going to strongly support the notice of motion. Thank you.
Good. Any other comments? So I'll just, sorry, another one, and I'm just going to put it out. So when we respond to an accident on the highway, we are able to be reimbursed for that time and response capability from the province. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Yeah. So if we're augmenting paramedic support that may or may not be able to reach us, and of course they may be the ones providing the training level and to ensure that we can integrate well into their system, maybe it's something that there could be a cost share between us and the paramedics if we're purposefully supporting the paramedics. So I'm putting myself out there, but I think the negotiations need to include that that level of discussion. It could be a way for us to integrate our two organizations much more closely, all for the benefit of our residents, and to increase their level of support and the bottom line, to save lives. So I echo Councillor Olmsted. I'm in support. Good. No other comments? We'll call for a vote. All those in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Good. Next item is correspondence. Under requires direction, there are no items. And to delineate, I talked to the CAO earlier about if there's an item that requires direction, I'll speak to it, or the CAO will speak to it. But if it doesn't, if it's listed on the agenda as correspondence for information, we will only discuss it if a member of council would like it to be discussed. Fair? So the information items, the first one is Public Works labor shortages. And it's a letter asking for our endorsement. And the second one is a highway infrastructure request that was submitted by the County of Lambton. Good. Is there any member of council that could discuss either one of those two items? Councillor Moore.
Lynn can discuss AORS, and I'll discuss the second one.
You'd like to defer your speaking opportunity to the Manager of Public Works?
Certainly would.
Okay, so for the first item, on behalf of Councillor Moore.
Yeah, thank you. So the on the Association of Ontario Road Supervisors, they've been working with the Ministry of Labour and Training to develop a municipal equipment operator course, and then they've also been working with Fanshawe College to create a first of its kind in the province, to create a course that's developed around public works, which also include obtaining their DZ license. Thank you.
Councillor Moore, is there any action that you wanted to recommend to council as a result of that discussion?
Something of this nature, I think it may reflect better coming from the county. I would like to pass this on to the county, if you would mind taking it, and see if they want to act or not.
Perfect. And I think we can do that jointly between Director Perkins and myself with the Chair of Operations.
That's correct. And they would have received the letter, because was brought forward from the Renfrew County Road Super Association, so they would have received it also.
Good. Is there any input from other members of council on this item? Yes, Councillor Trim?
Yes, it's been an idea of mine for a while that to increase our pool of prospective employees for the Works Department, that we consider hiring people who are not, let's say, fully qualified, may not have their DZ license, and train them ourselves, because we have the equipment and we could do the training. So you may get somebody that is very suitable in every respect, but may just lack that, and we could do it. And it would, I think, increase the pool from which we can choose good employees for our municipality, and maybe even people who are more local. So I agree with the idea, and I think that we should, in some way, if it's possible, take it on ourselves. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Trim. Any other input from members of council? So I'm just going to check with the clerk. Do I need a resolution, or can I just take this on as by the consensus of council that I can advocate on their behalf?
Sorry, I shut my microphone because I didn't hear you talk anymore. I'm wondering if that's a good question. I feel that if you're taking it to county, maybe they should have a resolution saying that they're going to petition you to take it for them.
Perfect. Would you like to move a resolution that would ask me to advocate to county in favor of this proposal?
Sure would.
Good. And Councillor Trim, you're going to second it. Any subsequent to it discussion? No? We'll call for a vote. Councillor Olmsted?
Yeah, I think there's probably a great opportunity for some cost sharing on this, as there is a huge depletion of DZ drivers across many industries. including my current industry, the construction industry. So I think there's a great opportunity if we're looking at taking on, I don't know what it would look like, whether it's we're putting on courses and training and that kind of stuff, but I know that there'd be a lot of interested local companies that could share, and you know, rather than training 3 or 4 or 5 guys, you could be talking about 20 or 30 people in a classroom, and these other companies would be able to provide equipment as well to help with some of that training. So there's an opportunity there, I think, to expand the scope of this. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you, and noted. Any other comments? We'll call for a vote. All those in favor? It's carried. Good. Second item, Councillor Moore, you said you had something on this one as well?
Well, this one pertains, goes directly to Honourable Doug Ford from Lambton County, and it has to do with the assuming responsibility of Garden Expressway and Don Varley Parkway. Excuse me. I guess they feel a little miffed that they're not going to be included in that, and they're looking for support for us to help better in numbers, I would think. So to see that some of our larger roads get turned over to a higher level, whatever that level may turn out to be. Again, this is something that probably would affect county more than us, because our busiest roads being Zion Line and Grant Settlement in the summertime certainly don't qualify for the Don Valley Parkway. So I really don't think this should be something we should ascertain. If anybody else has any comments on it, by all means, go ahead.
Thank you. So there's just one note in that they also speak to in that letter about getting more OSIF funding or greater access to OSIF funding, so we can, as a municipality, can maintain our roads on our own without the actual uploading to the province. So just as an aspect, right now, the way that they ask the OSIF is calculated is it's based on our replacement value of our assets, based on our asset management plan, and then it's a percentage based on a calculation that we're allowed to receive. So for this year, we're receiving $645,900, and that is capped at a 15% increase every year by the province. It will take us 6 years to get to the actual amount we should be receiving from the actual provincial government, around 1.4 million. So there's that gap is stuff we could be upgrading our assets now before their condition gets any worse, and changing that replacement value to bringing it more up to date. So that's the kind of side that they're also looking at it in this letter, of using that OSIF funding and getting it earlier, maybe removing that cap for certain municipalities. Thank you.
So just to clarify, Lambton is basically saying if Toronto is having problem managing their roads, we all are having problems managing our roads, and if you're not going to take over our roads like you did for Toronto, will you give us more money to help us manage our roads? I'm assuming that's in gist. So good. Based on that understanding, is there any comments or, yes, Councillor Tavert?
If we were to pass this and by surprise, if the government said they wanted to take over our municipally owned highways, who decides which highways they take over?
I think it would be fair for me to say that I don't think we'd ever see a township of Whitewater Region road get taken over. The most likely would be what the treasurer said would either be an increase to the cap, the increase of the cap over the number of years, maybe it goes to 20%, or a change in the formula to recognize that we are hurting just as much as Toronto. Those are kinds of things I think will be more pleasable for our level of government. County may have a road that is as busy as the Highway 17 and they could negotiate, but I don't know if it's going to compare with what Toronto has experienced in terms of volume. Yes.
So can we take out that first part, upload from local municipalities, and just put that the province of Ontario appropriately increase the Ontario Infrastructure Fund to municipalities? And
you'd like to move something to that effect?
No, I'm asking if it's possible.
Nothing's on the table in terms of a motion, so anything is possible.
Okay, I would like to amend the motion then to take out upload from local municipalities, that number 1, and just put for number 2, appropriately increase Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund to municipalities, blah, blah, blah.
Clerk?
So I don't think we're going to amend this motion because this motion hasn't been put on the table, so you can just make your motion and then it can be seconded. Okay. But I got it, so yeah.
Okay, so you have what she's discussed?
I have the gist of it.
Okay, we'll give you a second to clean that up. We'll take you as moved. We'll get her to read back to us afterwards, but while she's doing that, so moved. Is there a seconder to Councillor Tabert's motion? Okay, so seconded by Councillor Moore. Is there any discussion related to the motion? And we'll have it read again before we vote here. Councillor Trim.
Yes, I'll support it, but I think all we needed to do was support the letter, and it would include what we needed. And it covers the whole province. Some municipalities need more than what we need, but what we need is in the resolution. And for my part, I think all we need to do was support it. However, if there's a motion on the table that benefits us, I will vote for it. Thank you.
Good. Any other comments? Good. Sorry, Deputy Mayor. Yes, please.
Yeah, so if I can just come back to Councillor Trim's, is there any way we can just accept this the way it is? We just accept the letter the way it is without trying to change it, or, because then I think we're going to end up, this way here, it's very concise, it's there, and I think it's supporting the entire recommendation. So I don't know how you do that now, but I would be in favor if we can do that.
Just so I want to make sure I understand your language. So you'd rather endorse the letter?
Correct.
Similar to what Councillor Trim said?
Correct.
Endorse the letter rather than their own resolution?
Correct.
Good. So, Clerk, you stop me here. Okay. So our mover and our seconder, are you okay with changing the approach of the intent? Mover is? Seconder is. So in effect, Clerk, I'm going to remove it from the table, the motion.
So if everybody's all in favor, we can just do a friendly amendment and just, yeah.
So the motion on the table is to endorse the letter as presented. Fair? We're getting nods all around the table. Seconder and mover is nodding, and we'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Thank you. An exercise in procedural bylaw. Good work. Good work. We got it. Okay. Excellent. Announcements. Great. So just before we start with the announcements, our clerk is going to put up a calendar. Yeah. Okay, so this is an initiative that staff have been managing on our website. This is the calendar of community activities that is available for our community organizations to input and become a one-stop shop for those members of the community that are interested in knowing what's going on. I've been contacted by people who are not on social media and use this as their point of reference on the internet. So all I wanted to do, and I think Councillor Bell and Councillor Tabbert are working at the our Committee of Community Services to help encourage our organizations to use the website. But I'll just put it up there in case when we go through announcements, you want to highlight something that's up there, or you want to, something's not on there and you want to encourage the organization to have it put up there. Fair? Yeah, Councillor Olmsted?
Can we get the clerk just to back out and show exactly how we got to that calendar?
Excellent.
So we're gonna go to wastewaterregion.ca. Once you get to our main page, scroll to the bottom. Oh, I'm not on the main page. Yeah, but that, okay. Okay, yeah, right. Sorry, I was looking for events, but you're right. Okay, so main page, go to the calendar, and bingo.
When you highlight and when you scroll over on activity, it provides all of the contact information. And that's directly inputted, or can be directly inputted by the organization. So we're not trying to translate facts or be in a go-between. You can input that information directly. Good? Okay, so just as a reference point, if you're highlighting something that isn't on there, encourage the organization you're working with or communicating on behalf of to use that. Good, and with that, we will go to the Deputy Mayor. His number of announcements.
Well, thank you very much, Mayor. Excuse me. I just want to start off by congratulating, first off, Treasurer Curtis McGonigal, who has graduated from the AMCTO Diploma in Municipal Administration, and did it with honors, I may add. So congratulations to you. It's a big achievement. It takes a lot of effort and a lot of time to get through this, and so good for you. I don't know what you're going to do in all your spare time now, but congratulations, and that is really excellent. So thank you. Then we just have a couple of new hires, new people that will be joining us, new faces you'll be seeing. So we as your councillor are pleased to welcome the successful individuals who applied for the following positions. And first we have Joyce Drouin, who will be filling the position of Senior Liaison Assistant. The panel was made up of Amanda from the county, Stephanie, Julie Bennett, and Councillor Trim. And so we welcome Joyce. She comes with 8 years' experience with Western Ontario Community Resource Centre and has experience in managing, facilitating, and scheduling service provided to seniors and adults with disabilities. She'll be joining Julie and the Whitewater Seniors Group starting March the 25th. So just give her a big welcome whenever you see her out and about. Next, we have Amber Kent, who has joined as the recreation assistant. You'll remember Courtney left a little while back, so this is a position that's being filled. Amber comes to Whitewater with 11 years' experience with Ontario Parks, and currently and prior to this was working out of the Fitzroy Provincial Park. So she comes with quite a bit of experience. And she will be joining the Community Services Department on March the 25th. And then we have our summer students that are coming on. And so we have Mary Finan, who will be in office administration. We have a planning student, Benjamin Savage, that will be joining us. Parks and Recreation, William Richardson and Nick Levesque. Nick has been with us previous and is returning. He's going to kind of grandfather William in and show him the ropes as he joins us. And in Public Works and with Roads, we have Jacob Schuneman and Riley LaRiviere. That now Riley will be starting on. Riley was previous. No, I'm sorry. Riley is returning. I'm sorry, was here previous. I apologize. And finally, we have Public Works, Allison Gate, that will be joining us as well. So that's all of our our new students that will be joining us. So once again, we welcome them and look forward to working with them all. And I think that is it for me. Thank you very much, Mayor.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Bell.
Yeah, just a couple things here. So one of the, we had our first meeting with the Community Services Advisory Committee. It went pretty well. There was, everybody attended except, I believe, so that's including the Beachburg Rec Association, WDRA, Forest Falls Athletic Association, Cobden Rec, Ottawa Valley Makers, Whitewater Region Snowgoers, and the Riverview Seniors Club. and then with some people here at the township. It was a good first meeting to get some welcome and introductions and kind of get some things on the table. So that went pretty well. Hopefully have another one coming up in April. Volunteer appreciation awards are open right now. So there's some posters around the township just recognizing the date. So the deadline for nominations is April 5th, 24. There's 3 different categories. There's youth, which is 18 years of age or less, adult, 19 years of age or older, and then lifetime achievement. So you're able to nominate a volunteer to be publicly recognized for their contributions in one of those 3 categories. Nominees must be a resident, elector, business, or attend a school in Whitewater region. Achievements and contributions must be on a volunteer basis and not for pay. So nomination forms are available on the website under community and should be accompanied by a short description of the individual's contributions. So try to get those nominations in before April 5th to recognize some of the ardent volunteers that we have in our community, because there's lots of them. And then, so another project that's on the way is the adaptive reuse of the community centers. So there were a couple events the last few days. There was a virtual, one in Cobden and one in Westmeath last night. Cobden was, I believe, on Monday. They were fairly well attended. I believe there was 56 attendees last night in Westmeath. Had some positive feedback, some negative feedback, but all feedback's welcome. So right now the survey is still available online, and those posters are up around the community as well. So if anybody would like to participate in that survey and answer the questions that are available through that, please take part by March 29th, 2024. That'll be available. And on those posters, there is the ability to scan a barcode to be able to be taken to the survey. And then I believe it's available through the website as well. Clerk, could you just find where it is on the website just so I can mention that specifically? I found it on the website yesterday. Yeah, it's under projects. So if you go to the main website, go under projects, you can find the link to the survey on there. And then hopefully we can get as much feedback as possible between now and the 29th. So that's it for me.
Thank you. Councillor Tabbert.
Sorry, I just have 2. It's not on our community calendar up here, but on March 26th, from 4:30 to 6:30, there's a spaghetti supper at Cobden District Public School. And on April 5, 6, 7, of course, our Cobden community players will be putting on 4 old broads at the community ag, or the Cobden Ag Hall. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Olmsted.
Yeah, on Thursday, March 7th, we had our inaugural meeting of the Water and Wastewater Task Force, which went over pretty well. It was more an introductory meeting to get to know people and to get to know our systems, etc. We have some future meetings planned and some plant tours planned coming up. I believe it's next week, if I'm not mistaken. 26th. 26th of March. Actually, I see April 4th. Sorry, the plant tours are March 26th, and then the next meeting is April 4th. So we're well on our way to help figure out what's going to happen within the task force and provide a framework. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. And Councillor Moore?
This week we have a soup luncheon on Friday at St. Andrews United in Beachburg from 11:30 to 1. And then, as Councillor Olmsted said, we had the plant tour on the 26th of Beachburg and Cobden. And then there's also, with Lane and I, there's a council pick virtual from 6 to 7 that I'll be listening to. And then on the 28th, I'll be attending on a river power meeting. That's it. Thank you.
Good. I'm just going to come back to that one. I don't know if you can speak to it, Councillor Moore, but that Public Information Center, that's for the Transportation Master Plan at County, is that correct?
Yes.
Can you speak to that at all? Because I think any member of the public can attend if they want.
Any member can attend, but I don't know if it came through Lane or how come it came to me, but it came to me on my email, so I can't remember who sent it. Was it Lane?
Yeah, so it's the county's portion of the transportation master plan that they're doing and jointly. There will be supplement PICs for the townships, but we encourage all public, because we do have a lot of county roads that goes through the municipality, and they can join the virtual, virtual meeting on March 26th.
Perfect, thank you. And Councillor Trim.
Mr. Mayor, thank you for the opportunity. I had a couple of announcements, but they are concerning senior activities, and they are on the new calendar. And so I'm encouraging people to look at the calendar and to take part in those activities. One is an iPad training, and the other is a seniors fair, but they're listed up there. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Excellent, yes, 1st of April, iPad training.
First, get it.
Oh, right.
It's not.
Good. Any other, do we miss any other announcements that anybody wants to add? Good. Thank you. We'll now do bylaws on the agenda. Before us are three bylaws, including the confirmatory bylaw. The recommendation be it resolved that the bylaws listed on the March 20th, 2024 agenda be taken as read and passed. A mover and a seconder, please. Moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Tabbert. Any final comments to any of the bylaws listed? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? And it's carried. There is no closed session tonight, Clerk? Good. And therefore we are adjourned at 7:34 p.m. Thank you, folks.